Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you today. Wherever you all are, I'm coming to you from my home, as most of us are. Um, I am honored to have a few minutes to kick off this session and speak a little bit about the circular carbon economy. What is that? Is it just a collection of buzzwords? How do we think about it? So let's dive in. I hope I can give you some things to think about and take with you through the remaining sessions of the day and hopefully provoke a few interesting questions. So let's get to it. I'll start by just underscoring what Lauren has given us as a bit of framing. Listen, it's hard to focus on anything else these days aside from COVID, and especially if you live in the United States, the renewed push for racial justice. I really appreciated your remarks, Lauren. Why are we bringing politics into this? Look, I'm a Black man. I live in America. It's my life. Politics is something I can turn off if I don't want to engage with it on the news. Racial injustice is something I can't turn off. That makes it hard to focus. COVID makes it hard to focus. Focus on climate. We know the climate crisis is real and unfolding before us. So I'm just acknowledging that it's a difficult time to focus on climate within our own organizations or professionally or personally. But I think it's also important that we find a way to keep our focus, even as we engage in other things, because this fight is long from over, and it's really up to us to push on it to create a circular economy or a circular carbon economy. Now, this is something that I think is a great snapshot definition of what the circular carbon economy is. It's the 4 R's. You can have a look at them and see them for yourself. Reduce the amount of CO2 going into the air. This is sort of the mitigation bucket. Let's do fuel switching. Let's use energy efficiency, etc. There's reuse. There's beneficial reuses of all kinds of things. We're all familiar with recycling and the pros and cons. Here, there's reuse of carbon dioxide, for instance, in dry ice or in drinks or in greenhouses, or even enhanced oil recovery. Today, I actually want to focus on the recycling and the remove aspects. Recycling means not just reusing, but actually transforming it into something new, specifically making useful goods and products out of carbon dioxide, and removal, actually recovering excess CO2 that's in our environment. I'll say for context that when I think about a circular carbon economy, I'll point out that our economy is already carbon-based. Let me just say that again. Our economy is already carbon-based. That means most of the materials that we use, manufacture, consume, throw away, invent, create, are already today and have been essentially forever based on carbon materials, whether it's plant-based materials, all plant-based textiles, plastics, concrete. Anything that's not metal or glass is basically carbon-based. So the big idea with a circular economy, a carbon economy, is we know that we're swimming in around tens of billions of tons of CO2 too much every year. We know our economy is already based on carbon. Is there a way we can start to close that loop? And it's a big, stiff loop that we've got to close. But is there a way to close that loop and take what is today a waste product, mostly carbon dioxide, but other forms of carbon, like carbon monoxide, for instance, other carbon-based greenhouse gases like methane, and actually use them productively, feed them back into our economy in the classic circular sense. So with that spirit in mind, I want to dive into a little bit about number 3 and 4 here, recycle and remove, for the remainder of my talk. Again, you may have come across these ideas before. The recycle usually goes under the name carbon tech or carbon to value or carbon conversion. And removal, you may have heard it in the form of direct air capture. You may have heard it in the form of natural solutions like managing standing biomass in forests. These are all ways of directly removing carbon, especially carbon dioxide, from our biosphere and cycling it back into something more productive. So let me get into it. It's important to point out that this topic was, kind of a fringe topic. Not a lot of people were talking about new circular carbon economies even 3 or 4 years ago. I mean, people that have been working on this for decades have, but it wasn't part of the broader culture. But just in the last couple of years, it has started to enter. So it's actually a good opportunity to get engaged or to engage your colleagues, friends, family, and just, casual conversations about what this might mean. So first, CO2 based products. What are they and why are we talking about them? Here's a slide that's got a bunch of words on it, but it also has product examples at the bottom. This kind of can quickly get into the chemistry. I'm not going to give a chemistry lesson today, but just remind everyone that most of the materials we use are already carbon-based. Specifically, we tend to get our carbon from fossil sources. That means oil, gas, coal, the fossil fuels. There is another way to get that carbon, and we can get it from the carbon that we're literally swimming in the air, from our transportation systems, from our farming systems, from our heavy industry. You'll see some more scientific terms at the top of the slide for different types of materials, and then more recognizable products on the other side of this. And I've just got a few photos at the bottom. The idea here is you can make stuff out of CO2. Why should you care? On the one hand, there's a gigantic market opportunity. This is a summary of a study by Carbon 180 from a couple of years ago. Check it out. The top line is that the total addressable market of known materials that can be made of carbon with known technologies, not some kind of science fiction future scenario, the total addressable market is $1 trillion, or $6 trillion, sorry. That means there's money to be made. Or another way to say it is that there is already an active market for these materials. We don't have to figure out what to do with them. We already use them. We're just talking about making them a different way. It's also worth pointing out, this is a bit more detailed slide. I won't speak to it in too much detail. I'll just point out that we're not just in this for money making, clearly. We're in this for climate impact. You should always ask, if someone says we can recycle CO2, ask if it really makes a difference for climate. The answer is yes. Not every material can soak up huge amounts of CO2, but many of them can. Things that are used in huge quantities, like building materials, food, textiles, fuel, those are probably going to be the early winners, meaning if we make some of those materials out of CO2, we can have measurable impact on reducing CO2 emissions globally. This is something I got very close to because I work on the NRG COSIA Carbon XPRIZE. That's something you might want to check out. It's to see what's happening at the cutting edge of innovation here. There are a handful of companies from around the world that are demonstrating these solutions. They're all trying to launch businesses or are already in the market with these materials and products. And we hope to award the winners of that prize in the spring. So I'll leave it at that. You can check out our website and check out those companies. But these are real people doing real things on this topic today. This just shows a couple of example products that some of them actually we can purchase today. The vodka, the watch, the pen, the coasters, those are all available for purchase today. So I'm just demonstrating that these products are already starting to enter the market in small niche ways. The others are example products that we designed just to show off, what is possible with concrete, with polyethylene, with various carbon-based materials, to show the range of utility here. Now, number 4, even though it's called 2 here, sorry for the confusion, is the removal part. I've talked about recycling, but what about the removal? This is why we know that mitigation is not enough. I'm going to say that again because it's a crucial point. Even if we turned off all sources of CO2 today on Earth, every power plant, every car stopped, we sort of half tried that, frankly, through our COVID economic shutdowns. We only got an 8% decrease in CO2 emissions, depending on how you count it. Even if we turn off all our existing sources, it's actually not enough to meet even modest climate goals. We know we have to also remove some of the excess buildup. This is where the removal part comes in, and it's a crucial part of a circular carbon economy. The slide here, I'm showing how the types of carbon removal, in other words, the ways to do it, roughly break down into these 4 categories. I won't explore them in depth, but I want to make the point that there are a lot of different ways to do this. Plants have been doing this for literally billions of years. Other organisms on Earth. We can build machines to do this. Ocean ecosystems know how to do this. Minerals know how to do this. It's a question of how do we harness these and deploy them in a way that makes economic sense, in a way that makes social sense, in a just way, and in a way that can be sustained from a business or a deployment perspective. This is something we hope to dramatically accelerate at XPRIZE. We run giant incentive prize competitions. I won't go into all the words on this slide, but draw your attention to the different images. These are real photographs of real built or natural ecosystems that can remove CO2 from the air and from the oceans. This can be sort of a cornerstone of a circular carbon economy. This can be a fundamental source of new carbon that we can take to roll back into products. How do we start? And I'd like to close here. There's a lot of work to do, but here are my suggested takeaways. There are a lot of different ways to get involved. Carbon removal and the circular carbon economy is not an industry. It actually is an approach that is relevant to every industry. And I don't mean that as an exaggeration. We need rigorous demonstration of technologies that work. We don't want hand waving. We don't want ideas of what could work. We want to show what can work and what needs more development. We do need some shifts in policy, starting from the minute, thinking about emission standards or building standards or manufacturing standards. Anything that looks like buy green or any conversation about a green recovery is an opportunity to think about a circular carbon economy and make sure that circular carbon technologies are not excluded. I say here shifts in public mindsets and markets. This is helping people, I think, as we are all trying to do, help people understand the scope of the climate problem, but also focus on the fact that there are solutions. This is a solvable problem. It's an immense one, but it is a solvable problem. We know how to solve it. We do have a lot of work to get busy to go out and do it. I think a bit of shift in mindset to positivity is helpful. And the last thing I'll say is that this isn't a silver bullet or a single solution that's going to take over the world. That mentality is not necessarily helpful. There's a diversity of solutions that we know can be applied to a diversity of industries. And I think it's up to us to figure out where they fit. The last thing I'll say before Simone joins us for her remarks, my daughter, is to say, 1 second, Simone.
Doesn't know what time I have to go back on my meeting.
10:20.
10:20.
The last thing I'll say is to check out circularcarbon.org. This is a platform of free data. We think it's the largest collection of circular economy data on companies, on new innovators, on investors, and on other industry catalyst groups. Circularcarbon.org, please have a look at that information. It might be useful to your organization. It's freely available. You can refer other companies there. We're just really trying to build a database of info to share with the community. Okay, Simone is not available for closing remarks. Sorry about that. Change of plans. But with that, I'd just love to close, say thank you to everybody, and really look forward to the rest of the conversation today.